Number 20. Swatch. In the early 1980s, the Swiss watch world was dying. For more than 100 years, Switzerland ruled time. Its watches were on the wrists of kings, soldiers, and explorers. But then something strange happened. Cheap, super accurate quartz watches from Japan started to flood the world. They were electronic, they were tiny, and they were very, very cheap. People stopped buying the old mechanical Swiss watches. Factories closed. Watchmakers lost their jobs. It felt like the end. Then one man, Nicholas Hayek, walked into this disaster and said, "No, we are not finished." His crazy idea? A fun, colorful plastic watch that was Swiss, but cheap, simple on the outside, smart on the inside. In 1983, the first Swatch was born. It was light, bright, and almost like a toy. But behind it was a serious mission: save an entire country's watch industry. People laughed at first. Then they started to buy, and buy, and buy. What looked like a simple plastic watch quietly pulled Swiss watchmaking back from the edge of death. Number 19. Casio. Before Casio made watches, it didn't care about time at all. It cared about numbers. In 1946, in Japan, a man named Tadao Casio started a small company that built calculator parts. He worked in a country still recovering from war. Money was tight. Every screw, every wire, every idea had to matter. Casio became famous for small, smart calculators. Then, in 1974, they asked a strange question. If we can count numbers, why can't we count seconds on your wrist? They released the Casiotron, one of the first truly smart digital watches. It didn't just show the time. It could even show the date and adjust for short months all by itself. A company that started with buttons and numbers had just created one of the hardest watches on Earth. Number 18. Citizen. The story of Citizen begins with a dream hidden inside a name. In 1918, in Tokyo, a small group of watchmakers opened a workshop called the Shokosha Watch Research Institute. They wanted to build high-quality watches in Japan, just like the best Swiss ones. But they had a problem. Good watches were too expensive for most people. In 1924, they made a pocket watch with a new name on it: Citizen. The word was simple, but powerful. It said, "This watch is not just for rich people, it is for every citizen." That first Citizen watch was even given to the mayor of Tokyo. Imagine holding it in your hand, knowing it carried a promise to an entire country. Number 17. Tissot. Picture a tiny snowy town in Switzerland in 1853. Inside a small workshop in LeCoultre, a father and his son, Charles-Félicien and Charles-Émile Tissot, sat under dim lamps, bending over metal parts as small as grains of sand. They didn't have computers. They didn't have machines that could do everything for them. Their tools were simple. Their patience was not. From this quiet room, Tissot began making pocket watches that traveled the world, to Russia, to America, to people who would never know the names of the men who built them. Tissot would later create some firsts. One of the first mass-produced pocket watches, one of the first watches with 2 time zones, and, much later, watches that mixed touch screens with tradition. Number 16. Longines. Long before many countries were even modern, in 1832, a man named Auguste Agassiz opened a watch workshop in Saint-Imier, Switzerland. He called his company Longines, from Les Longines, meaning the long meadows near the factory. It sounds peaceful, but the watches, made there, would one day race with pilots, explorers, and even early sports heroes. Longines has one of the oldest unchanged logos in the watch world, a winged hourglass. Wings for speed, an hourglass for time itself. Number 15. Seiko. Tokyo, 1881. The city is noisy, crowded, and full of new ideas. In a small shop, a 21-year-old named Kintaro Hattori repairs clocks and watches late into the night. He doesn't know it yet, but he is building more than a shop. He is building Seiko. At first, his company is called Seikosha, the House of Precision. He makes wall clocks, then pocket watches. In 1913, he creates Japan's first wristwatch, the Laurel. For a country still catching up to Europe, this is huge. But Seiko's real shock to the world comes in 1969. That year, they released the Seiko Quartz Astron, the first quartz wristwatch. It is 10 times more accurate than most mechanical watches and much cheaper to make. Number 14. Tag Heuer. In 1860, a young man named Edward Heuer opened a workshop in Saint-Imier, Switzerland. His eyes weren't just on hours and minutes. He wanted to capture something much faster, single moments. Heuer became obsessed with measuring speed. How fast could a car move? A horse? A man? He worked on special watches called chronographs, watches that could start, stop, and reset, like a tiny stopwatch on your wrist. In 1887, he patented the oscillating pinion, a clever part that made chronographs smoother and easier to build. This tiny piece of metal would be used by many others, even rival brands. Fast forward to the 20th century. Race cars got faster, planes flew higher. People needed time they could trust at crazy speeds. Heuer watches started appearing at racetracks, on the wrists of drivers who risked their lives on every turn. Number 13. Breitling. In 1884, in yet another small Swiss town, Saint-Imier, a man named Léon Breitling stared at a problem almost no one else was thinking about. Machines were getting faster, factories were growing. Scientists and engineers needed better ways to measure short amounts of time. Seconds, half seconds, even less. Breitling decided his future was not in simple time telling, but in timing itself. His company focused on chronographs, complicated stopwatches that could fit in your hand or on your wrist. By the mid-1900s, pilots were flying into the clouds with Breitling on their wrists. In 1952, the brand released the Navitimer, a watch with a strange, busy-looking slide rule on its bezel. It wasn't just decoration. Pilots could use it to calculate fuel, speed, and distance. Number 12. Panerai. Florence, Italy, 1860. Not a snowy village this time, but a city of art, stone bridges, and dark, narrow streets. In a little shop near the famous Duomo, Giovanni Panerai opened a watch store and a school for watchmaking. For a long time, Panerai was not a brand normal people knew. It lived in the shadows. In the early 1900s, the Italian Navy came knocking. They needed something special, instruments and watches that could glow in total darkness, deep underwater, for their secret divers. Panerai answered. They used a glowing paint called radiomere, made with radium, a radioactive substance we now know is very dangerous. The dials shone bright in the black water. The divers saw their time clearly. But the glow came with a hidden cost. For decades, these watches were almost unknown to the public, locked away in military use. Only in the 1990s did Panerai step into the light, selling to civilians. Number 11. IWC. Most Swiss watch companies were started by Swiss men. IWC was not. In 1868, an American engineer named Florentine Ariosto Jones left Boston and traveled across the ocean to Switzerland. His idea sounded crazy: mix modern American machine methods with old Swiss hand skills to make excellent watches. The local watchmakers did not trust him. They feared big factories would crush small workshops. But Jones found a place far from the crowded valleys, Schaffhausen, near the Rhine River, where water could power his machines. He called his company the International Watch Company, IWC. Number 10. Jaeger LeCoultre. Deep in the quiet Vallée de Joux, far from big cities, a man named Antoine LeCoultre opened a small workshop in 1833. The valley is cold, silent, and often covered in snow. Maybe that is why such careful, patient work could happen there. Antoine loved solving tiny problems. He invented tools that could measure unimaginably small distances. He built movements with more and more parts until they seemed almost alive. Number 9. Cartier. When you hear Cartier, You may think of diamonds, not dials, but the story of one of the first modern wristwatches begins with a friendship and a fear. In 1904, Brazilian pilot Alberto Santos Dumont had a problem. He flew early airplanes made of wood and cloth. To control them, he needed both hands. But to know how long he had been in the air, he had to pull a pocket watch from his vest. It was clumsy. It was dangerous. He went to his friend, the jeweler Louis Cartier, in Paris. "Can you make me a watch I can see without using my hands?" he asked. Cartier joined a square shape with a leather strap and answered with the Santos, one of the first true men's wristwatches. Number 8. Hublot. Compared to the old names we've talked about, Hublot is a baby. In 1980, an Italian man named Carlo Crocco started a new brand in Switzerland. He did something that seemed almost rude to tradition. He mixed gold, the most classic precious metal, with a black rubber strap, like something from a diving suit. People were shocked. A luxury watch on rubber? He called his brand Hublot, the French word for porthole, like the round windows in a ship. The watches looked like metal windows bolted to your wrist. Number 7. Audemars Piguet. The name is hard to say, but the story is simple. Two friends in a valley, fighting against time itself. In 1875, in Le Brassus, Jules-Louis Audemars and Edward Auguste Piguet joined forces. Their workshop focused on complicated watches, pieces that didn't just tell time, but also tracked the moon, the date, and more. Number 6. Breguet. To understand Breguet, you have to travel back farther than almost any other brand, back to candles and carriages, to kings and revolutions. In 1775 in Paris, Abraham Louis Breguet opened his workshop. He wasn't just a watchmaker, he was almost like a wizard of mechanics. He invented the tourbillon, a spinning cage that fights gravity to improve accuracy. He created special hands and numerals that still carry his name today. Number 5. Vacheron Constantin. Some brands are young, some are old. And then there is Vacheron Constantin. Its story begins in 1755 in Geneva, Switzerland, when Jean-Marc Vacheron signed a contract with his first apprentice. That paper is one of the reasons the brand can say it is the oldest watch company that has never stopped working. Number 4. Omega. In 1848, in a small workshop in La Chaux-de-Fonds, a young man named Louis Brandt began assembling pocket watches from parts made by local craftsmen. He didn't know his company would one day go to the moon. For years, his workshop grew slowly. Then, in 1894, his sons developed a new movement so precise and easy to repair that they named it Omega, after the last letter of the Greek alphabet. It meant the ultimate, the last word in watchmaking. Number 3. Patek Philippe. Think of a single object that is passed from grandfather to son. That is the picture Patek Philippe wants you to see. But how did it begin? In 1839, in Geneva, a Polish refugee named Antoine Norbert de Patek started a small watch business with François Zapek. They made high-end pieces for wealthy clients, but the partnership didn't last. In 1845, Patek met a French watchmaker named Adrien Philippe. Philippe had invented something new and clever, a way to wind and set a watch with a crown instead of a separate key. It seems simple now, but then it was a revolution. The two men joined, and in 1851, the company became Patek Philippe. Number 2. Richard Mille. Most of the brands we've met were born in the 1700s or 1800s. Richard Mille is younger than many of the people who might be watching this video. In 1999, a French businessman named Richard Mille decided to do something almost insane: launch a new ultra-luxury watch brand in a world already full of famous names. In 2001, he released his first watch, the RM001. It was made of high-tech materials like titanium with a skeletonized movement you could see right through. It didn't hide anything. It showed every screw, every bridge, every tiny wheel, as if daring you to understand it. Number 1. Rolex. The most famous name in watches did not start in Switzerland. It started in the foggy streets of London. In 1905, a young man named Hans Wilsdorf, just 24 years old, opened a company with his brother-in-law, Alfred Davis. At the time, wristwatches were seen as weak toys. Serious men used pocket watches. In 1926, Rolex created the Oyster, one of the first truly waterproof wristwatch cases. To prove it, they put it on the wrist of a young woman named Mercedes Gleitze as she swam across the cold English Channel. When she came out of the dark water, the watch was still ticking. In 1931, they invented the perpetual rotor, an automatic system that winds the watch as you move your wrist. Rolex watches climbed mountains with explorers, went deep under the sea with divers, and traveled the world on the wrists of spies, pilots, and world leaders.